I'm going to see if I can get through the day wearing nothing but the plate carrier on my, well, I wore pants, but unfortunately they make you wear pants somehow. I don't know.
Hello there and welcome to the Gear Talk. Today we have a very special guest, the man, the myth, the legend, Prince Suit Repeat.
Hello everyone.
Welcome.
Thank
Good to
you,
have you
Gabby.
here.
Appreciate it.
So, you just recently attended Finnish Brutality 2023. How are you feeling?
I'm feeling a little sore, but I'm feeling great. I had a blast. It was the first competition style shooting event that I've ever done, and it absolutely met my expectations and more. I was very I was put to work in the breacher category, and I did great. It was
Yeah.
a learning experience, and I had a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was good times, and yeah, if it was your first competition, you definitely started on a deep end.
Yes, I figured, let's throw myself into the deep end, and that way every time I do it, it'll be a little easier.
Yeah, good thinking. Yeah, so you were using the borrowed gear from us, and I would be interested to hear that. What were your findings? Did you have any lessons learned during the match about the gear what you were using?
Yeah, well, I started out because I wanted to stay true to some of my videos where I don't wear a shirt.
Yeah.
I was like, you know what? I'm going to do this first day. I'm going to see if I can get through the day wearing nothing but the plate carrier on my, well, I wore pants, but unfortunately they make you wear pants somehow. I don't know. But yeah, so I put this on with with nothing underneath, and I taped up these. The other one's not taped because I have the hose for the water pack in the back, but I taped this up with some kind of like hockey tape,
Yeah.
and it made it a little softer because I know these edges they're not supposed to be worn. You're not supposed to be wearing a plate carrier with no shirt, So I found that I made it about 2/3 through the day, and I just said, you know what, I started to get some serious little, because when you're moving around, even with the hockey tape on, it started to dig a little bit into my shoulder, but that was just because I wasn't wearing a shirt. So I just put on the combat shirt after, and around after lunch, and then all that went away, and I wore a shirt for the rest of the match, and so that wasn't an issue at all. But that is a note, just like if you're not going to wear a shirt, just expect there to be a little bit of wear, a little bit of abrasion there. But I also ran into the issue of when I was setting up my kit, I have such a small waist that the combat belt, it didn't quite, like there was a little bit of slack, so like when I pulled it over to put on the actual exterior belt, like the interior belt that it connects to, it was a little too small. So what we did was we fitted this. What I did was I wrapped them up this around the Velcro belt underneath, and then this suspender system held up that inner belt, and then that way there's no chance that even with all of the the weight of the pistol, the weight of the kit, what was in my dump pouch, the knife, all the things that were on the belt, that wouldn't weigh it down.
Yeah.
And so when I use these suspenders, they're great. They never, it never the belt never gave way. These stayed on pretty good. I did notice that when I was shirtless, again, that was my decision, that just a little bit of this hook going into your skin can be a little uncomfortable. But like I said, once I put the combat shirt on, all that stuff went away. So these did work really great for me. So I was happy that these aren't, these are prototype right now, but they really did a great job in keeping that belt up and just offering that extra support.
Yeah, I think there was even though going in a match or wherever without the shirt with the full kit, is a bit extreme, but I think that the important point is that if there are the sharp edges or something, you need to take that into consideration, especially if you are using the kit for extended period of time. So whether it's a pouch placement or where is your knife or whatever, because things can happen and it's really stupid to feel miserable based on your own decisions to put something on the wrong spot. So I think that's a valuable lessons learned when you are setting up the kit for yourself.
Definitely. And speaking of the knife placement, I was a little bit worried because the knife was back here, and I realized that when I put the strap here around it, I had to tuck it kind of behind it, and I was worried that maybe if I was, crouching or crawling down, that maybe that knife would dig into my ribs, but it never did. It was in the perfect kind of I would say it was about 4 or 5 o'clock, kind of not fully all the way back on behind me, but kind of right there, and I had no issues with the knife protruding into my torso. I was worried about it, but it didn't happen. So that was good.
Yeah. You have worked a lot with different guns, gear, doing some crazy stuff, experimental stuff, and seeing lots of different type of stuff. Based on your experience, do you have some checklist on your mind, or how do you approach setting up your personal kit? Either it's for leisure or for more serious stuff.
Well, a lot of the stuff, I'm in a pretty warm climate for most of the year in the south of the U.S., the southeast. So I run into, just a lot of people think I wear a shirt just to show off or whatever. And maybe that's a little bit part of it. But for the most part, it's just because it's so hot and I'm out there by myself. So a lot of that does I do take into consideration just the heat and just wanting to have something that that's not super heavy on me for most of the year. Some of the year, about a quarter of the year, it's nice and cool, and I can kind of do a proper, real kit with all the layers and stuff. But most part, it's pretty hot, so that kind of goes into how I set it up. But as far as the gear goes, it's I'm just a YouTuber, and even though I'm LARPing a lot, it's pretty much that. So if I was going into a situation where I had to take seriously my own survival, my own life into my hands, I wanted to be prepared for some kind of combat, God forbid, hopefully that never happens. I think having the backpack, I didn't quite realize that how important that could be just for putting stuff in, miscellaneous items. And then also I'd never run a water pouch before, and so that was also very convenient. I filled mine up all the way so that I have a little bit extra to drink from, because I know we had the 1 liter, the limit. So I think that this size was pretty good of a plate carrier goes. But when I set up my stuff, I usually just try to go as light as possible, and but I'm still very much learning, So I'm this gave me a lot of data, a lot of really good data to kind of prepare myself, for the next one.
Yeah, it's it's a bit different if you're just doing the range stuff, but if you need to do something more extensive, being on a field longer, or whether it's exercise or something, the backpack is, you need to have that, because you need maybe extra jacket, you need more water, something to eat,
completely.
It's a must if you do a bit more serious stuff.
Yeah, and running the backpack definitely made me want to get one now, because I don't have one for my. I mean, I have a backpack, but not one that attaches to the plate carrier. This is pretty cool.
Yeah,
and it's not too bulky, but it definitely, you get a good amount of stuff in there.
Yeah,
and this is also neat with this cinches up here.
Yeah, it's always kind of the compromise, or you need to make a decision whether you attach the panel to the plate carrier, or if you just have the backpack. Both have pros and cons, and I think from how I see it, with every gear you need to kind of go through what are the pros and cons, and then make a decision on best of your ability where you're going to use it.
Yeah, we say there's no free lunch.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you gotta choose what's gonna help you, what's gonna hurt you, and kind of weigh them. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and well, you're a professional in internet. Have you noticed this phenomena that people are seeking for the kind of the perfect answer, that what is the best plate carrier, what is the best chest rig, what is the best pistol?
Oh yeah, I mean I'm guilty of Googling just those same things, right? You know, like, oh, what's this, and then then you go down a rabbit hole of lots of different people saying that they're the expert and they know exactly what you want. But really, like you said, it comes down to what's your mission, what is your purpose, what is your needs, you know, what is your style, you know, what is your body type, what is your, you know, because like a pistol for me that fits my hand perfect could completely be too small or too big for someone else.
Yeah.
So it really just comes down to, like, what are the things you need and what is your style.
Yeah. This was the kind of the first match for you, and especially like a brutality match. Now, when you know what's happening, is there anything what you would do another ways for preparing, or some tips and tricks for someone who is thinking to go for their first match?
Yeah, well, you know what? I think the thing that I learned the most that is, if you're going to be in an armored division, train with the armor on. Don't train shirtless in shorts like I did, and do kettlebell throws and think you'll be all right. You gotta wear this thing for, like, you know, spend a good day at least each time you train. Just try to spend as much time as you can wearing this and getting used to the weight of it before you go and do the match, because that's one thing that I didn't quite realize. I was like, oh, you know, I can pick these things up and throw them into the truck, like, no problem. I was looking at the stages, and then you're just like, but wait, I have another 40 something pounds. Like, this isn't quite 40 pounds, but with all this stuff, you know, on you, it's quite a bit of weight. So training with that, you know, in mind, and having the weight on me, definitely something I would have done. And then also, I think, you know, I had a borrowed setup as far as the guns go. So, you know, obviously, if you're going to bring your own gun, even better, and train with that, with all the gear. But for me, I was used to shooting the Ahrex pistol, which helped. But I think sprinting is something that universally, you know, sprinting with some kit on, whether it's just 40 yards, stop, take a, you know, shoot if you can, if you're at the range. But if you're not at the range, stop for a sec, see if you can focus on something, and then run, stop, see if you can, you know, even if it's just pointing, that will help. Because I think, you know, a lot of people, they can run, but stopping, focusing, and then, you know, hitting the target is a whole other thing when you're tired and you're out of breath.
Yeah, those are the really good advice, and like training with your kid, it's kind of give the confidence, but also when you are setting up the kit, even if you do just a PT with it, it usually irons out those problems we talked about earlier, that if something is scratching you or the pouch is on the wrong place, because it's better to find out while training than on the first stage, as I did when I got the bolt cutters kind of knocking off my ear pro. So yeah, training is essential, and even though you would have all the cool guns and stuff, if you're not training with them and find their limitation, you might end up having trouble.
Completely agree. Couldn't agree more that is the most important thing. Yeah, train in your gear, and see what works and see what doesn't before you're on. You know, the pressure's on. Even though it's all for fun, but you know, when you're in the middle of the match and you're, you know, doing it, you don't want to have something, you know, mess up and you be like, oh, I wish I would have figured that out. You know.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a big part of it, and I can't believe you had the bolt cutters on that time, man. That's crazy. And during the breacher stuff too. That's another thing with the breacher category, man. Yeah, it was a whole other wrinkle added into the equation of doing that stuff, because that's just just a lot of pain. But
but it was a fun pain.
Fun pain.
I was like in one stage looking that when there was this coffee trailer, there were people drinking coffee and eating donuts at the same time when we were doing push-ups and squats and all that stuff. So it puts to make kind of puts things in perspective and thinking your life choices.
Yes, rethinking a bit. Yeah, people eating donuts and you're just pain. But you know what? I didn't throw up, so I felt good about that. Yeah.
Good stuff. Any closing thoughts?
Man, overall, this has just been a very big blessing to be here, and I'm very grateful to have come to this and discovered how amazing and fun these matches can be. And the experience was incredible. I learned so much, and it's just been a joy to take part in it. So I really thank Varusteleka and Jari and just the whole team for having me. And it's just been really cool to see some of this gear before it comes out, and test it out and see what works and what doesn't. And I definitely will be back.
It's great to have you here. Thank you.
Likewise, thank you.
Yeah. So until next time.